Women of Reddit, how do you know when a guy is genuinely good and not just trying to get you under the covers? The night I knew I'd marry my husband was before we even started dating. I knew he'd been interested for a few months, but I wasn't available, and he respected that. Never pushed the boundaries that I'd set. One night, I was working a late shift and getting ready to leave at about 10 p.m. I'd been dropped off earlier in the afternoon because I forgot to put gas in my car, so it was sitting on the side of the freeway about a half-hour drive away. I called my ride, multiple times. Nothing. I called my roommate. Nothing. Called my friend that lived in the same town. Nothing. Sent out a bunch of texts. After half an hour, still no replies. I knew my coworker, now my husband, lived in a town between where we worked and where I lived. I decided to call up this guy that I barely knew outside of work and hope he was as kind as he seemed to be. 15 minutes later, he was picking me up. Of course, I was embarrassed and beside myself that no one had answered my calls or texts. But he drove me to the nearest 24-hour store, bought a jerry can, drove to the gas station, went inside to pay for the gas, and came out with a cup of coffee for me. He drove me back to my car, got me squared away, and followed me back to the same gas station where I was going to fill up, just in case something went wrong. Throughout it all, he just kept saying, "You've had a long day. Let me help." We get to the gas station, and he fills up my tank, and came back out with a pack of the brand of smokes that I like. Our conversation after that went something like this. "You didn't have to do that." "You said you were out." "I can buy a pack in the morning. You keep them." "You know this isn't my brand." And he handed them to me. We ended up standing there, talking and wrapping up the night, and I just started tearing up and told him, "I'm glad you exist." That's been something we repeat to each other now and then to this day. He never brought up this experience after that, except years later to tell me how pissed off he was that no one came to get me, and to confess that no one had ever told him they were happy he existed, and that he was happy he hadn't decided to drink that night like he normally would have. I used to think I was kind of obligated to jump under the covers with my boyfriends when they wanted it, just because that was what I thought you did in order to be a good girlfriend. A few of my exes expected as much, so I just complied, even if I wasn't feeling well or was tired or whatever. One day, I was feeling really sick, and my current boyfriend was helping me out. I told him that I felt really bad, but I just didn't think that I could do anything with him that night. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I don't need you to be intimate with me to love you." I learned a lesson that night about what a good man is. When I'm not feeling well, or he does or says things to show genuine concern and wants to take care of me. One time I was really sick and waking up in the middle of the night with coughing fits. He would always wake up and rub my back. I also have asthma, and the next morning he said, "I think I'm going to go buy you an inhaler so you can always have one here at my place." This was in the beginning stages of our relationship, and my heart swooned. A guy with those qualities is a keeper. He's happy to share housework and hobbies, especially if he shares in the mental side of housework. It's fair to do an equal share of the physical chores, but one thing that still often falls on the woman to do on top of half the chores is the mental load. The keeping track of what needs to be done and when, which in and of itself is quite a chore. Being kind to people or animals that don't immediately benefit him. If he's kind to his coworker going through a bad time, a customer service person, or goes out of his way to help an animal, that's a big green flag to me. Long-lasting platonic friendships with women. It's a pretty good indicator that they see women as people with value outside of romantic or sexual relationships. The usual objection when I say that is, having female friends might make him cheat because he's spending time with other women. And to save time, my response to that is, no, seeing women as only romantic or sexual partners is what's going to make him cheat. Seeing you and other women as complex people worthy of spending time with for company, rather than just for intimacy, is going to make him far less likely to cheat. I remember the first time I kissed my now husband, who was clearly very interested in a relationship with me for a few months beforehand. I asked him what it was he liked about me, and he gave me the most thoughtful, detailed answer with real examples of a time I did something that he found sweet or beautiful. I couldn't help but kiss him after that. He's still the best person I know. If he remembers little details about you, like your dog's name or your sister's job, and actually pays attention when you talk. If he remembers the answer you gave him when he asked, "What's up?" and follows up with genuine interest, like asking, "Oh, how did XYZ thing go?" If he makes an effort to talk to you instead of just bugging you to hang out with him. If he doesn't try to constantly steer conversations towards flirting. And if he's perfectly fine with you not being able to hang out if stuff comes up. Those are some of the things I look for. But then again, I've been fooled before. Trust your gut too. I would also like to clarify, it's unrealistic to expect a guy to remember every little thing about you, but if he recalls something small, it proves that he was paying attention. And there are other ways that guys can show this, like by asking more specific questions and remembering general facts about your life. If a guy puts effort into knowing you, he's genuine. If he respects your boundaries. It wasn't until my current boyfriend that I realized my feelings of feeling weirded out by all the guys before him were justified. They always pushed when I expressed hesitation or discomfort. I told my boyfriend that I wasn't ready, and he didn't make a move again for another 2 months, until I was ready and initiated it myself. For me, this is a big one. Before my husband, I didn't know that that kind of behavior wasn't okay, so I thought my boundaries were the problem. I let guys make me feel bad for not doing things for them, and I continued seeing those guys because I thought that's what I was worth. It's not what I'm worth, and my boundaries weren't the problem. The problem was the other person who cared more about getting me under the covers with them than they cared about whether or not I actually wanted to do that. I knew my husband was a keeper. He had been my friend first, but we lost contact because he had a crazy girlfriend at the time. When we reconnected, she was officially his ex, but I had an emotionally abusive fiancé. He talked me out of it. He helped me get the courage to leave, and then he waited for me to heal. I gave him no time frame. I told him that I needed to be single before I made another commitment because he deserved to have all of me and be more than a rebound. Neither of us saw other people. We talked every day. I told him he didn't have to wait, but he insisted. When we saw each other again for the first time, it just clicked. We were meant to be. He was a long-haul trucker, and he switched to a regional driver. I went back to college, and now we're building our lives. 7 years together, 4 married. If he's genuinely mature, he's compassionate, honest, reliable, intelligent, has a generally upbeat personality and a positive outlook on life, and excellent self-insights and self-awareness. I've always loved guys that are good to kids and animals, even when no one is watching. I was always told to watch how a fella treats weaker creatures and you'll know all you need to know about him. My husband can get frustrated or upset easily, but I've never once seen or heard him be unkind to an animal. When we were long distance for a little bit, in college, we would talk on the phone and he would just be going on about how frustrating his job was and how mad it made him. Then I would hear him completely switch tones and say, "Well, hi, puppy, what are you doing over here? Are you a good girl? Yes, you are. You're a good girl." And that's when I knew that I had a good man, because no matter how upset he got, he had the self-control not to take it out on innocent people and innocent creatures. For me, it's a willingness to help me out, even when it's not his problem or his fault, and when he's dependable in a crisis. And I've got a story that pertains to both. My man and I went camping, driving my very old Mercedes down a bumpy dirt road. Predictably, I drove it straight into a ditch and tore something important looking off the bottom of the car. I freaked out and cried because we were 2 hours from home with no cell reception and no money for a tow. My boyfriend just happened to have a pocket knife and some duct tape on him and crawled under the car in the rain to cut the splash guard free and get the car moving. All I did was cry and apologize. He even made me a cup of tea afterwards. I love that man. If he's prepared to admit some blame for past relationship failures, if he's still friends with some of his exes, if he has female friends, political views that show empathy for how different others' lives can be, and if he's unbothered by notions of traditional masculinity. This may sound weird, but if he cleans the sink after doing dishes, or a similar extra step in another area, that extra step shows me that he's not just performing. He has actually put some thought into the task he's doing and wants to do it right. That logical and thorough approach is usually carried to other aspects of his life, like communication, budgeting, and the bedroom. My current husband and I waited a few weeks before we got intimate in our dating relationship. One night he said, "Come over, I want cuddles, but no funny business. I just want to have cuddles." So before we ever got intimate, we just cuddled and fell asleep together. I knew he was a keeper after that, even though the slight prodding against my back meant his body was betraying him a little bit. He would discreetly tuck it under his waistband though, and go back to cuddling me. Easy. They treat you the same when the passion starts to decline and you're no longer in the honeymoon phase. I know that makes my relationship sound bad, but long-term relationships go through these phases. When both parties are tired, stressed, or whatever. If your man stands by you, then he's a keeper. Short-term, I suppose, just wait until you know them before you get into bed with them. That's not something I've been good at, though. I suppose just don't get emotionally invested in something that has not been properly defined. When my current boyfriend and I got together, we were still teenagers. I got really hammered at a party and my friend bailed on me. I didn't have a ride or a place to sleep that night. He took me to his house, brought me glasses of water and snacks, and didn't make a move on me all night, even though we shared a bed. We've been together for 4 years now. He helps you clean, or cleans for you when you're tired, is willing to try new things for and with you, encourages you to be a better person, makes you laugh, makes you happy, can argue with you without raising his voice, genuinely cares about you, and doesn't give up on you no matter how hard it can get. Of course, you should be reciprocating all that too. When something upsets you that wouldn't upset them, they don't try to use the fact that it wouldn't upset them as a way to invalidate you being upset. Having empathy, kindness, and the ability to respect others without demanding that they earn it. Doing the right thing without calculating how it will benefit them. The ability to talk about feelings without hostility or defensiveness. And self-awareness that includes both their positive and negative characteristics. When I don't have to fight him on things I'm educated on. My partner had an infected cyst and hates doctors. I could tell it was infected and said it needed antibiotics. The next day, I'm fully expecting, dreading even, to have to fight with him to go to urgent care. But no, he got in the car, asked if I wanted Starbucks on the way, and went. Afterwards, I asked him, "Why'd you go to urgent care first thing in the morning?" He looked at me like I had two heads. "You're smart and clearly knew what you were talking about. Why wouldn't I take your advice?" I told him I'm used to being dismissed or having to fight to make a very reasonable request or change. He's done this on several occasions, and I always apologize because I'm tired of assuming he's an a-hole just because of past experiences that don't involve him. He's not helping you do the dishes, he's washing the dishes because he's a freaking grown-up and understands that means picking up after himself. And he applies that same shared responsibility philosophy to all chores and tasks, and similar financial goals and spending habits. When they aren't afraid to look silly in public. I was on a first date with a dude who tripped off the curb and landed hard. He tore the knee on his jeans and one of his hands was bleeding. Still on the ground, he looks up and says, "I think I'm falling for you," with a big dumb smile. It didn't work out between us. We both mutually agreed after a few dates. But that was the most into a guy that I ever was after a first date. His reaction to that fall was a huge green flag. So many guys get weird or angry when they get embarrassed. Nice guys are good to you. But genuinely nice guys are nice to people that they don't even want to get anything out of. I also have a theory that nice guys, in the "you should jump into bed with me" kind of way, don't realize that being nice is the bare minimum. And thus, you have to bring something else to the table. Be funny, be smart, be interesting. Hell, just be attractive. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some appeal in aesthetics, but don't claim nice like it's an achievement. You're supposed to be nice. Bragging about it is a sign that you don't understand that, and it's a pretty good indication that it's not genuine. I think for some of these guys, it's a matter of how they perceive themselves versus the stories they hear. It's easy to come across horror story after horror story of first dates with men. It's easy to find women complaining about crappy or abusive exes. It can make the bar seem artificially low. If these crappy people can get dates, then surely I could get a date and be awesome at it. Then, if they go on a date, they show basic human decency and expect to be lauded for it, completely unaware that they've been comparing themselves to literally the worst. And I think it has to do with that phenomenon where people think something is more common the more they hear about it. No one makes posts on Ask Reddit asking about mid-level dates, for example, so these guys end up thinking most guys are just scum, and that therefore they must be wonderful by simply just not being garbage. Or as garbage. I'm not a girl, but my significant other says that she could tell with me because I was the same around her as I was with my friends and her friends. I was respectful to her family, I had a good career, and even then she was skeptical at the start, but I just kept hanging out with her, and then we went back to my place for something non-platonic one day, and it was a good day. When my boyfriend and I officially started dating, we went at it that night, and I ended up sleeping over. Before a single piece of clothing left my body, he made eye contact with me and said, "If at any point you feel uncomfortable, just tell me to stop." And let me tell you, that was the biggest god turn on of my life. We've been together for about a year and a half, and live together now. Being able to acknowledge that their parents are flawed human beings, not being overly critical or resentful of them, just to be clear, but simply being able to acknowledge and articulate the ways in which they are not perfect. I was married to someone who was utterly incapable of this, and it meant that he never stood up for me or showed any respect for my boundaries against his cruel and manipulative mother. When he treats other people with respect and tips appropriately at dinners, discusses women in much the same terms that he discusses men. For example, if he's talking about a female coworker, he describes her as Marge, the new hire in accounting who brought the surprisingly edible fruitcake to the Christmas party, and not as Marge, the cute blonde chick who wore the reindeer sweater to the Christmas party. He also doesn't expect to drive my car if we're taking my car somewhere. This one has weeded out a surprising number of guys over the years. When they build a nest out of grass and decorate it with blue plastic, eggshells, stones, or whatever flashy things they can find. Oh wait, that's the bowerbird. Damn, I wish human mating rituals were that straightforward. The first green flag for my fiancé was that he went to a drag show with me, had fun without making a joke of it, and was happy and respected the performers and fellow audience members regardless of gender, sexuality, and presentation. He also has female friends, and friends in the LGBTQIA community, and he can joke about himself and laugh off macho posturing from other guys. Another one I respect from him and some of my guy friends is that they have female musicians and comedians and writers and actors that they're fans of for reasons other than finding them hot, and are able to discuss why they like their work in a respectful way. Alright, now we hop into the rapid fire segment for stories too short to make a full entry out of, but too good to leave out. Let's jump in. He's not envious or jealous of your success or accomplishments and doesn't attempt to dominate or control you. He genuinely listens and cares what the person he's listening to has to say. When they drink, they get mellow, not mad. When you fart in front of him, and he farts even louder as a rebuttal instead of being disgusted. He sends me dog pics he knows I'll love from Reddit when he's pooping. True romance. He's open to new understandings. He listens and will thoughtfully consider new ways and challenges to his thinking. I find you can usually tell the character of a man by how he treats his wife or partner. Being a good loser. Minigolf is a great litmus test. So guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like. With that said, I'm ReddList. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.
You had to play bloody cat and mouse, didn't you? While people were trying to work.